Hello, new format. Welcome to another episode of Gassing powered by CO2U. Now, I've chosen a slightly different format for this. I want you to imagine sort of, if you've got like the Oscars or something like that, and then Tom Hanks has won, but he's kind of so super busy filming on his new movie or whatever that he can't actually turn up to accept the award. My guest today is, he's a big deal. I've been very excited to get him on for some time. So this was my option. So I've taken it, and I think we'll do quite a bit more of this from here on in. I should caveat today's episode with just a little brief story before we get going and before I introduce my wonderful guest. I was supposed to have this very flashy microphone set up today, but I went to visit our new European warehouse this week, and I boarded a flight to Hamburg from London, which was lovely, and took off and everything was good. And as we came into land, we came through some clouds and it got really bumpy. And as we came in closer to land, there was like a guy on a seat doing this, praying and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, the aircraft goes, it goes back up above the clouds, and we wait for a few minutes, and the captain comes and goes, ping. And he goes, hello, this is your captain. That was a bit blustery, but we'll be just going back into land again in about 10 minutes time. If you could just all stay, no, I didn't say stay calm, but So go back around, and we go back into landing again. Only this time we get a bit lower, and it is like, put it this way, I'm not a nervous flyer, but I did start asking myself, like, is this my time? Do you know what I mean? Like, is this like we all got to go one day? Like, am I the statistic? Am I the guy that goes down on the flight into Hamburg and crashes, and everyone's like, oh, what happened to that Marcus? Oh, he died on the flight. So anyway, same thing. Aircraft back into the sky. And long story short, emergency landing in Hanover, ground staff strike at Hanover. So you could get off the plane, but you couldn't get your luggage. You couldn't get a taxi. You couldn't get a train. Couldn't get a car. Anyway, long story short, I spent 8 hours on a plane. I started my journey at London Heathrow, and I ended my journey at London Heathrow. And my week since then has just been back to back, everything going a little bit wrong. I get home to my very exciting new podcast setup, go to set it up all last night, and it didn't come with a lead. And I've then been running around trying to fetch the right lead, which I was unable to get. So that's my story, which we can include or not include. But my guest today is Oliver Bolton of Earthly. Thank you for joining me. Ollie,
thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here, mate.
Sorry I waited for you to speak for so long.
No, that's all right. That's all right. No, I've been enjoying the podcast. It's an honour to be on it. I've been a regular listener, tuning in, and no, it's been really fascinating to kind of like hear the other people you've had on.
What do you make of the hat and the sticker that stays on?
Yeah, I mean the hat it's different, isn't it?
It is.
Where's my hat?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that's in. I'm not sure that's quite within your image. Ollie, can you just tell everybody? It's earthly.org. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, earthly.org. So yeah, we help. Do you want me to give a quick overview?
Well, I just want everybody that's listening, please just jump on the website briefly, just so that when Ollie's talking about what it is that they do, there's a bit of context to it. But we'll come on to it, mate. But we're going to go back a little bit. We're not going to go back as far as the GCSE revision course in Guildford or my stage production of The Lion King. But we are going to take it back a little bit because you've been an entrepreneur really your entire career.
Yeah, I mean it's been a while, and I think for me it probably started when I was about 14. I was buying and selling personal number plates, and basically buying number plates that were like surnames, and then sending letters to all the people in affluent postcodes that had that surname and trying to flog them these personalized number plates. So yeah, I think that's super random, but that was probably my first like business that was involved in. Do
you agree? Do you go by the kind of that it's not something that can be taught, that it's kind of just because I get these stories with most of the founders that I bring on, they've usually got a story of I was flogging Mars bars at break time, or in your case, number plates, which I'd never heard before, which is brilliant, by the way.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have continued on that. But what's your opinion on that?
I don't know. I mean, I think that like having the hunger from a young age is probably helpful. Given the fact that it's not straightforward, like doing your own business. But I think that also, like, I've met a lot of really amazing founders that have been like really kind of, pragmatic about the way they've done it. They've gone and got certain qualifications. They've gone and built co-founders that like complement their skills. Got into a really amazing accelerator. That's been really helpful. So I think there's different ways. I wouldn't rule out, being an entrepreneur if you haven't always had like the hunger to be an entrepreneur, from when you're younger. So I think it can be learned.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. Not sure where I stand on that because I don't know. I just think the whole thing's it's just so incredibly tough. I feel like you have to really, really want to do it.
I think the resilience bit, like, because there's always massive challenges. I think like that's harder, and I think that can't be taught. I think you can either deal with it or you can't. And so I think that's probably more of a thing to focus on. And like, again, I've met people that they've tried something and then it hasn't worked, and then they're like, right, that's me done. Whereas I think true entrepreneurs, even if there's been failures, they'll learn and they'll get back up and they'll do it again and again and again until they're successful. So I think that's not something that maybe can be learned. And that's just in
acting, they call that the bug.
Okay.
So actors will say, they see you at an audition, they go, still got the bug, and you'll be like, yeah, man, until I can get rid of this bug. And I think that entrepreneurship, I completely agree with you. I think it's exactly the same. It's that desire to, for a lot of people, and for me, actually, personally, it's never been. I've wanted to make money, but it's also been about doing a thing, making change, and creating, and also being much more in control of your own destiny. So you can't kind of went straight into it and launched a soft drinks brand, and you've been in that space, which is quite relevant to what I'm doing now for, and still are to some degree, for your entire your entire life, or working life. Why did you start there? Was that a particular?
The honest truth is, it was completely random. And when I was studying at Newcastle, I had this idea for an anti-hangover drink, like typical classic student. And so that's sort of where it started from. And I was doing some different businesses at uni, and some of the owners of like the venues that we were promoting, supporting, sending students down to, I kind of pitched this idea one evening, and they were like, I think, put together a business plan. We could be interested in supporting it. So literally that was the only reason why I fell into the drinks industry. And probably with the knowledge that I now know of how competitive and challenging, you've got your FMCG experience as well from Nutshot. I mean, it was a great area to learn, and because you have to get everything right, from recipe, branding, marketing, just because it's so competitive. But I'm not regularly advising people to launch health drinks.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult space. I was at Dalston's Cola yesterday, if you know that brand, listening to their journey, and it's a tough one. So Ollie had a drink called Alibi, but you have another drinks business now, What a Juice.
Yeah,
so it started as Watermelon, has kind of evolved into this whole kind of all singing, all dancing, multi-flavored juice drink.
Yeah, so it's all the same business, and so we built up Alibi and sold it to one of our export distributors a few years ago, and then we had other brands. We have other brands. So Watermelon, which is like a watermelon water product, which we launched a few years ago, and then we've just expanded out the range. But Steph has been running the business, the drinks business now for the last sort of 5 years, and she's ex-Innocent and Grays, so much more experienced and capable in the drink sector than I am, and she's done a great job.
You're the king.
Definitely not the king. Definitely not the king. So but yeah, it's been a great, it's been a great, and I think just through that business, like I took it through becoming a B Corp in 2015. So
Yeah.
we're one of the 2008, 2015 founding B Corp companies.
Yeah,
And
wasn't it the first ever soft drink or drinks brand that became a B Corp?
yeah, I think we were the first in Europe, first soft drinks business in Europe to be a B Corp. And that whole kind of experience, which was a recommendation from Mark Cuddigan, who was one of our non-exec advisors, who's the MD of Ella's Kitchen, or he's just literally left Ella's Kitchen and sat on the board of B Lab for many years. That whole experience has really shaped the whole direction of my career, and kind of like understanding how business can be used as a force for good,
Hmm.
people, planet, profit. um, that was a real catalyst for me then moving on to Earthly,
So was
which
that a
has
bit of
like,
a was that a bit of an awakening for you? I mean, before that point, had you had much of an interest in conservation, that space, like the planet? I mean, or was it kind of like, yeah? Talk
I mean,
to us a little bit about that.
I've always loved nature. I've been brought up like surrounded by nature, and so that's always been a passion. But no, I hadn't thought about using business for impact until we went through the B Corp process. And even going through the B impact assessment, you get a deep understanding of the strengths and the weaknesses of your company in terms of purpose and impact. And so that was really fascinating. And it's one thing I encourage people. You might not meet the minimum standards required for B Corp, but actually just do the assessment, because you'll learn a lot about your business. And actually the process itself shows you how you can structure things for impact as well. But that's what set me off, and I got to meet a lot of other amazing businesses and founders, who are running these impact led businesses. And so yeah, that kind of set me off on a different path, where I want to be financially secure and successful, but actually the impact and the kind of, you're thinking more about the legacy of what you're leaving on this planet, and
Yeah.
kids feed into that as well. So and that's really been the focus for the last few years with Earthly. Trying to create something that has a real impact in the world, and can help kind of tackle some of these big issues that we've got ahead of us.
And can I ask you, because you're very close to this subject matter, and the rest of us are probably just feeding from the Guardian or wherever it's coming. How bad of a state is the world really in? Is it as bad as we're led to believe? Is it worse? Is it better? And is there any hope?
Yeah, yeah, it's bad. It's the simple answer. To not beat around the bush. There's definitely hope. There's we have all the solutions available now to fix things. It's just a question of implementing and getting the funding towards them. And so the big thing we're doing at Earthly is there's a funding gap to nature of $700 billion a year,
Wow.
that we need to bridge. And a big part of that is around trust. Trusting the projects. And there's been media coverage around lower quality projects. And so our objective at Earthly is to accelerate funds to projects, but to build trust. And so we basically built an assessment that you can screen projects across carbon, biodiversity, and social impact, and kind of de-risk investments for corporates looking to invest into nature.
So I think,
Um,
can you just, for everyone listening, can you just succinctly explain, like, so
yeah.
Earthly came about, your business, because you went through this B Corp and you had this awakening moment, but what exactly does it do? And who might be listening that might be thinking, I could use this business, or I could get involved in this business? Pitch it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if just to touch on the sort of the origin story, I guess, is
Hmm.
the B Corp stuff sort of fed into that. But it was in 2018. I don't know if you remember the report, the IPCC. They had this 1.5 degrees report. It was like, we've got 10 years to fix climate, to stay within 1.5 degrees. So that kind of came out, and that was when a lot of the mainstream press was covering the challenges that we had with regards to the climate crisis. And at the same time, my son was born. So I had these like two, on the one hand, this awareness of the sort of situation we're in, and then the other, you start thinking about, I've just brought this person into the world. What's their future going to be
Hmm.
like? And so for me, that was the real catalyst to then to launch Earthly with my co-founder Lorenzo. who is also he has some young children, and he wanted to pivot his career into having impact as well. And the big issue we looked at is this funding gap to nature, and why that was, and it's all around this trust. Businesses want to support nature, but they want to know that the projects are doing what they say they do, and are having impact. And so, yeah, at Earthly, simplistically speaking, we work with companies. So some of the companies we work with have got net zero commitments of 2030, so they're reducing their carbon footprint, and their negative impacts, but they know that by 2030 they're still going to have, it's called a residual emission. They're still going to have a certain footprint they can't reduce, that they're going to need to offset. So we help them find leading projects to balance out that remaining footprint.
Yeah.
And the other half of our clients are, they're not offsetting. It's not linked to a footprint, but they want to invest 1% of revenue to nature, or they want to reward and use nature as a gift, or as
Which in a
a
way
reward
is
to
kind of
customers.
offsetting, right? I mean, like if you're offsetting with money, are
Well,
you offsetting your pollution?
yeah, I
If
mean,
you're
what's interesting is a lot of these customers are low impact, so they're already, it's kind of, yeah, it's negligible, the negative effect they're having in the world, but they want to give something back to the planet, and they're using that as a competitive advantage and a competitive differentiation. And I think what's exciting as well about these types of companies is they're often seeing a return. So, they're gifting these nature rewards, but it's driving sales, it's driving loyalty, it's driving engagement, above and beyond the cost of the nature investment they're making. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of, we're no longer just speaking to sustainability managers. We've got commercial teams who are like, okay, great, this is a tool that I can use to actually grow my business and to build my brand, and also does good for the planet.
And Ollie, a lot of your clients, they appear to be quite big corporate businesses, but is Earthly working with smaller businesses and things like that, or are you mainly focused on these kind of giant banks and um, tech businesses and whatnot?
Yeah, we have 630 businesses that we're working with, and so a
Wow.
whole
Okay.
range, from smaller SMEs up to big enterprise clients. So anyone can go on our marketplace and find projects we've screened, that meet our minimum standards across carbon, biodiversity, and social impact, and transact with projects. And then
Yeah.
for larger enterprise clients, we have, we kind of give them more support. Typically, so I'd say about 25 of our customers are 1,000 employees plus. So that is
Right.
probably more of a focus, just because there's more opportunity for impact with those bigger companies. But we want to be as inclusive as possible. So we have a self-serve marketplace for SMEs.
I understand that Earthly has a mission, but how does it make its revenue?
Yeah. So we what we do is we have two key areas. One is like SaaS fees. So dependent on the level of support that business wants, from we have things like a customer hub for like training of the team, being aware of regulation, like providing different levels of data around the projects to be used for marketing. We do things like webinars, and like help educate the teams within the businesses that we work with. So depending on the level of support, there's like a monthly SaaS fee that you pay. But
Just for
our
everyone
main,
listening,
yeah,
when Ollie talks about a SaaS fee, you're talking about like a subscription to your
yeah.
online business, like you would a Shopify, a Zero, any of these other things.
Exactly. But the main revenue stream is through a transaction fee. So we typically charge between 5 and 18% fees on any transactions to projects. And what we'll do though is we'll group. We'll have 10 customers purchasing from a project or supporting a project. So we'll group them together, and we'll typically get like a wholesale rate, which we'll then pass on to
Yeah.
our clients, which often absorbs any fees that we charge. But we, essentially, yeah, we charge that fee for kind of due diligence, and to kind of de-risk the investments into projects. And a big kind of a big move to us has been, from, it's called spot purchasing, where you're supporting and purchasing carbon credits, biodiversity credits, or natural assets, as they're being traded. But a big shift is moving to actually helping companies invest in the creation of new projects. So
Okay.
they're paying money up front now, and then it's going to deliver good in the future. But for those companies that have got a 2030 net zero commitment, what it means is they can create a new project that will start delivering the credits they need for 2030, but at a much more reasonable cost.
And
So they
Ollie,
can almost like de-risk the finances of that.
presumably, this change, this hope, um, this really has to be business led, right? It can't be government led. I mean, what's your opinion on that? You know, who has the power to actually make the changes that need to be made? And I'll just also add, is the biggest problem that we face that, frankly, these big companies, in order to make their money, really, they have sort of no choice but to pollute. We know that mobile phones are coming from cobalt mining. We know that it's not sustainable no matter what they tell us. All these kinds of things. Um, if you could wave a magic wand and change government policy or change business policy, which would it be?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's no easy answer. Look, I think we are seeing like regulation coming through, which is helping change happen faster. Because I think that what this all boils down to is speed, and I think eventually stuff will happen. But is it going to be too late to prevent feedback loops and some of the things that are already starting to kind of kick in with regards to temperature rise and sea level rise and things like that. But ultimately, yeah, we believe businesses can play a really key role in pushing forward that change. But also people can put pressure on politicians, can choose to support businesses that are doing things the right way. So I think there is
Which do you think is the most important of those two?
between businesses and people.
Businesses and government.
I think businesses really. I think the challenge we have with government is there's this the policies are around votes,
Hmm.
and I think that's
That's
we've
all
got
that
this
really
short
matters.
we have this short term like cycle which where we need to be looking longer term, multi-decade, and actually investing in the solutions that may not be um, not everyone's going to like them, but they're necessary for our survival on this planet. And so I think that's the big challenge that we have. There is some stuff coming through. So like one of the areas that we focus on is the built environment, so the construction industry.
Yeah.
And there's this new legislation coming in called biodiversity net gain. And basically, really simply put, if you're building a new development, you have to restore biodiversity, you know, to cover the impact of biodiversity building or development plus an extra 10%. So it's like
Okay.
110% offset through biodiversity. So that's coming in. That's already come into legislation. So that's going to be a great catalyst you know, for investing in nature protection and restoration in the UK.
Um, what's your opinion on? I see. I see a lot of things, brands, businesses. What I would call. I don't. I think the term is greenwashing. So
Mm.
there's a couple of projects happening out in Saudi Arabia. You're probably familiar with the city that they're building. You know, the
The line.
line, and
Yeah.
they're saying it's carbon neutral or something.
Mm.
Is that nonsense, or are we? Should we believe the hype?
Yeah, well, I think look, firstly, the phrase carbon neutrals, it's kind of agreed that it's not right, and it's being phased out now, and actually, it's not going to with like legislation coming in, it's not going to be allowed. You're not going to be able to use that phrase. So there's this whole thing around green claims code, and what you can say about things. I think that the whole concept of the line is pretty nuts. Like to build something that large, and it's wide enough, the line, to fit a stadium in. To give you an idea
Yes.
of like the size of it. So I actually met when I was at COP. I met someone that was working on it. They were telling me about it,
Wow.
and they were showing me the height compared to a nearby skyscraper that was 200 meters high. So it's going to be a crazy project. I think look, the simple answer is it's easier to not have the negative impact than to do it and then to try and make up for it.
Okay.
So yeah, the focus should be on reducing our negative impacts and not having the negative impacts in the first place.
is the challenge to kind of to sort these businesses out, or is it to try and solve the poverty issue? Do you feel like I kind of feel like I can't see why some of these countries would be incentivized to care at all when we've had this incredible industrial revolution, we have all this cool stuff, and they're saying, well, hang on a minute, what what
Mm.
about us? Why do
Hmm.
we have to conform to all of these new rules and stay clean when you guys have just done all this polluting? You've got everything you need now, your air
Yeah.
conditioning and everything else. Where do you stand on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean the hypocrisy. No, I get it. It's. I think the reality is we don't have a choice but to all work together, regardless of what's happened in the past, to do things in the right way to ensure our survival on this planet. I think that's what it boils down to. There needs to be financial support for for certain countries to sort of help them with the transition. So I think
Yeah.
that's a really key part, and some commitments were made at the last COP, and that there needs to be more on
COP
that.
for those listening, sorry, Ollie. COP for those listening
Yeah.
is a huge climate conference that takes place. Does it always take place in the UAE? I think it does,
No,
or is it all
it
around the world?
changes. Yeah, it changes.
Yeah, and everybody who's involved in this space really ought to be there and does go there. And Ollie was there for what, 2 weeks or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, for half of it, for about 5 6 days,
Oh, okay.
um, and so I think that's a key point to make. But also with the whole just transition and you know money flowing to the right communities, the exciting thing about nature-based solutions is it's often those communities who are at the front line of climate change, who are most affected. They're the ones that can benefit from supporting nature-based projects. And so one of the things that we look at when we're screening a project is, how involved is the community? What's this? It's called benefit sharing. Are they getting education, healthcare? Are they actually getting a share of the funds that are going to these projects?
Yeah.
So I think that's it can be a great mechanism and tool to sort of send money from the global north to the global south.
Okay. And because the point of my podcast really is the entrepreneur and the kind of the challenges. You've come into this like many of us, like me, with COTU, not knowing, I mean, a clue about gas or how you fill cylinders. You've come into this with, I guess, no prior education, if you will, in the subject matter. I'm interested. You have a co-founder, so that must have been a conscious choice because you're an entrepreneur. Some people want to go alone, some people want a co-founder, don't want a co-founder. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges of getting this thing set up as well, because it was obviously going into tech, which was a bit of a new space for you to some degree.
Mm.
And yeah, that process, because obviously where you are today is quite a long way down the process. You've also you've always been a king of fundraise. You've managed to raise money, which is incredibly difficult. So yeah, I'm just interested to hear. Obviously, it's good, it's going well, but tell us a bit about the tough times. Let's get into the nitty
Yeah,
gritty
I
of
mean,
when you
it's
started it and getting it off the ground.
yeah, as you say, it's a whole new area for me. I'd never had been involved in a tech business before, so that was, and I'd always wanted to. I think I was always excited by the opportunity to scale tech. Coming from producing a physical product, where, as you've touched on in other episodes, you have to wait for listing reviews.
Yeah.
You have to physically move stuff around, which is 95% water, and all of the challenges and trials and tribulations with that. So I was always very excited about a digital business, which you can get the right formula and you can just scale it up. Because really, at Earthly, the only thing we own are the laptops that we use. We all work remotely, so it's completely scalable and with minimal costs.
And how have
But
you found that building it completely remotely?
mm,
Because I know that in your previous businesses, you unless I'm wrong, you've always had a physical place of business.
yeah,
Like, how does that work for you? Not work for you? What are the pros and cons?
yeah. I mean, it works for the team, and yeah, people. It's not the right setup for everyone. So for some of our younger team members who have maybe graduated from uni, they'll go to like local co-working spaces. So we provide a budget for them to do that.
Yeah,
Because often they're in sort of house shares, flat shares. So they don't want to be working in their bedroom, which I completely respect and understand. But for us, I love the efficiency of I'm sitting in my attic. I've got my
Yeah.
screen. I've got my screens around me. It's pretty quiet up here, apart from my cat's been trying to get in. So if you've heard a meowing in the background, that's why.
I've got one crawling
Um,
around my legs actually as we speak.
yeah, have you? But but no,
Literally,
I
as you
think
said it.
yeah. But I used to commute into an office, and I look at the time that I save, and I get an extra 6 hours a week basically
Mm.
of not commuting to spend time with my family, to spend time on work. And I've got privacy, but we have done stuff to introduce the sort of social side. So we use Slack. We're regularly talking, speaking to each other, seeing each other through Slack.
It's quite a big team you've got now. How many staff?
16 of us. Yeah,
Wow. Okay. And just going back then, just to try and answer my
yeah.
question, tell me about some of the challenges because I can't imagine it's all been plain sailing.
Well, when we launched, we were Almond originally, and
That's right.
so we were a B2C app, basically helping you connect your bank card, and when you purchase from sustainable brands, either in shops or online, we would track all the merchant IDs, and you'd automatically get gifted nature rewards. And so we were doing that, building up our own community, and it was growing slowly, but we had we had an approach from CaixaBank, which are Spain's biggest bank, and they said, look, we love what you're doing in your app. Can you do it in our app? And we were like, wait a second, we've got 6,000 users. CaixaBank's got 4.4 million customers. We
Hmm.
should just be working, plugging in our tech into existing communities. And so that was the kind of the real shift where we were like, hang on a second, we should be B2B. And at the same time, we were like, almonds, they're linked to unsustainably, water intensive sort of trees. Like that's not the right word for what we're doing. So yeah, we thought we'd find a name that worked better. Then did what it said on the tin, and so yeah, Earthly was one of the names that I came up with, and we were lucky to kind of get all the trademark and domains and stuff. So
And
yeah,
do you see in the
that was a big
future?
pivot.
Okay. Do you see in the future? You may have a B2C as well, or is B2B really where this business is going and staying?
My challenge has always been wanting to do everything. So my old Ollie would be like, yeah, we'll do that. But actually, I'd much rather support a customer that's doing that with their consumers. So like almost do a B2B to C in a
Yeah.
way. And so yeah, so we've got no plans to do. Look, an individual can come on and can purchase from the projects in our marketplace.
Yeah.
So we can support that, but we know we're geared around companies, helping their employees, helping their customers, just because we can have much bigger impact and we can achieve much bigger scale. Because going back to the thing we were saying earlier, it's a time issue. Time's against us, so we're trying to do stuff, grow things as quickly as we can, without, running before we can walk.
And when you were raising money, did did this all qualify under SEIS, EIS?
Yeah, SCIS and EIS, and we've still got EIS allocation. We've raised £3 million to date. But yeah,
Wow.
it's been 3 funding rounds, so we're currently at Seed Plus. But it's been really tough. It's been really really
Yeah.
tough,
I mean,
and
the last five years, they're saying. I mean, it's never been harder to raise money, and then obviously there was a period, so I guess, before you were in tech, where I think
yeah,
it was like I'm starting a tech business, and they were like, "Here's a seed of £1 million. Just go and draw us some drawings." I
yeah.
mean, I'm being silly.
No, no, no. But and I think going back to your point about the co-founder, having Lorenzo alongside it's been really great to if we've had a meeting with an investor and they've said no, to have a co-founder to kind of debrief and to kind of share that with, to
Yeah.
share the highs and the lows, and so that's been I've really loved that. And also as we've kind of touching on this whole, the industry we work in is it's heavy, it's quite a deep thing that we're trying to solve, and typically, so it's nice to have people to share that with, to sort of share that experience and to kind of go through it all together.
I bet you have some incredibly frustrating conversations sometimes with potential clients who just don't get it or the problem. And I imagine that's something that if you've got a co-founder, afterwards you can kind of sit and do a bit of
Yeah,
therapy.
I mean, yeah, totally. I mean, like two things. there's been a lot of media around offsetting. Understandably, we can't just buy our way out of this. We have to actually fundamentally change the way that we're doing business and reduce our impact on the world. But I think one of the challenges has been, people just associate carbon credits with offsetting, when actually a carbon credit is like, that's almost the unit, and that's the unit towards nature protection and restoration that is the most popular and is the most effective at the moment. The voluntary carbon unit, which is
Yeah.
basically represents a unit of carbon, a ton of carbon that's been removed or a ton of carbon that's been avoided. Now that can be used for offsetting, or actually you can just make a donation towards a project and retire 1,000 carbon credits, and not link it to anything. And so I think that mindset of, it's not carbon offsets, they're carbon credits, and they can be used in different ways. They can be used in the wrong way, and they can be used in the right way. So kind of helping people understand that has been, a challenge. I mean, probably the other thing is, we'll speak to clients and they'll be like, oh, we're just focusing on reduction for the next decade. And the reality is we don't have the luxury to do that. If we all just focused on reduction and we didn't actually get money towards nature protection and restoration today, then, we're toast, to be blunt. So it's doing both things. It's working on reduction, and at the same time, it's finding ways to kind of get these flows of funding towards, these leading nature protection and restoration projects.
And if there's one thing that we can do as individuals, one thing, it's a bit of a loaded question, but what would you say is the main thing that a person can do or change about their life if they're not already doing, that might make the biggest impact?
I think the number one thing is voting correctly and
Oh,
being
interesting. I wasn't
yeah,
expecting
and
that.
actually understanding,
Wow.
really understanding. Yeah, so I think that's the number one. And then I would say, you had Nick on the show. I'd say getting your pension, making sure your pension is aligned, with what you're, with impact, supporting the right companies. A lot of us are inadvertently supporting through our pensions, the fossil fuel industry.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's the other three, the three, um, minimizing air travel, using a renewable energy provider, and then cutting out meat from your diet and dairy from your diet. So those are like the things. But I think there's this whole shift of like just focusing on us and what we can do. But again, going back to what we believe is businesses can be like key change agents.
Yeah.
And going back to what I was saying about like the regenerative, imagine if every company you bought from had this net positive impact on the planet. So in a way, people are going to consume whether we like it or not. Okay, consumption is being reduced as people are buying like more well-built things and well-made things. But if we can turn consumption into like a force for good, where everything you're buying has this net positive impact on the planet, and I think that can be a real catalyst for positive change as well.
Yeah, which is where you guys come in, really, because that's what you're trying to sort of not teach but encourage businesses to start leaning towards. Because I feel like most businesses are about greed and profits and rewards for shareholders, unfortunately. But if they can be convinced that their consumers will only buy from them if they can prove that they have these sort of
Mm.
good supplier channels and all the rest of it, then that's better for profits. That's what's going to drive it. And obviously, you talk about Nick and having him on, and I asked him the question, can you really invest in a pension and get the same return from this better for the planet businesses than if you don't? And he was absolutely adamant that
Mm.
you could, but obviously didn't really have the opportunity to go into greater detail. I mean, do you think he's telling the truth?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
Great.
he's definitely telling the truth. This is a big shift. This green transition is happening now, and there's commercial opportunities to support the companies that are pioneering this green transition. Um, so yeah, I think I completely agree with that. And looking at renewable, we're seeing solar, wind, cheaper than fossil fuel.
Yeah.
So it's like it really is a no brainer. But I think yeah, the business side is really interesting, and ultimately, if we don't support nature, then we have no businesses, we have no us. So it's not a question of like it's a nice thing to do. It's an imperative. We have to find a way to. And so there's stuff happening like the Task Force for Nature-related Financial Disclosures, which is, sounds very kind of long and technical, but it's basically looking at nature risks and nature opportunities for companies. So that, and this is coming into legislation. So if you're a mining company, you need to basically look at how you're negatively impacting nature and how nature can be a risk to you. Things like fires, floods, and storms, etc. And so this whole mindset is shifting, where we're like embedding nature into the heart of everything that we do, which is what we need to do, to survive on this planet.
Yeah, that sounds fair enough. Future for Earthly, what are your kind of have you guys set targets? Like where do you see the product, the business, the brand sort of 5 years from now? I guess. Like, is it something that you're kind of? Is this something that you're building forever and ever for the greater good, or is it? Do you have like an exit strategy? Like, what's the plan for the business? I'm interested.
No exit strategy. Our mission is to protect and restore at least 1% of the planet by 2030, and what that translates to is 150 million hectares, basically, of land. Okay. So that's the target we're going after. And helping businesses to protect and restore, that target, which all feeds into the whole protecting 30% of the planet by 2030, which is the global kind of agreement that was agreed at COP15, the biodiversity COP in Montreal. So for us, we are open to like who we partner with and like the path to get us to there. But Lorenzo and I and the team, we're all impact focused. We're not looking to kind of flip the business, to make some money. We're doing this to genuinely have a positive impact. And going back to the origin story, with the birth of my son, for me, a real catalyst for launching Earthly was I was like thinking about future chats with him. When he was 13, 14, or a bit later in his teens, having a beer with him in the pub. And I was imagining a conversation where he was like, look, your generation knew, we were in the shit. Why didn't you do more? What did you do? And so it was thinking about that future chat of like him challenging me, was the real catalyst for launching Earthly. And so, I want to be in 10 years time, well, he's 6 now. So whenever it is we're in the pub, 10 years time, I want to be able to,
we're in the UK, so I'd say 10 years sounds pretty.
I want to answer that.
If pubs are still in business, and that's a whole other. It's probably a whole other podcast, to be fair. Lovely, and no, I get it, and it's kind of heartbreaking to think of, him kind of saying to you like, what did you guys do? Like, what have you brought me into?
But Marcus, it's really interesting because Lorenzo was saying his mate works at oil and gas. His kids are like 11, 10, and they just say to the dad, like, we're embarrassed and ashamed about you because of what you're doing, which is, and it's the younger generation who are like, they're openly talking about, you're going to die of old age, we're going to die of climate change. So like, this is a real thing. It's on our doorstep. It's hard to talk about. It's incredibly depressing, but there is, the solutions are there. We're working on them, and
you seem buoyant and positive, and you talk about hope. So I don't think you'd be doing this if you didn't believe there was any chance of kind of turning around our misfortune and making a real difference. So that's encouraging, and my business's mission is mainly around convenience with CO2. That's why we built the business. But as an aside of that, making sparkling water at home is so much better than buying plastic bottled water and having it in the house. That's not to disrespect soft drinks brands that need to be in food service and have no other way of being there. But I mean, that is, and also I remember having a conversation with you, which would be a conversation for another day, when actually you were explaining that plastic actually isn't as bad as, like, there are very, very many good things that plastic can offer us, as well as, causing a lot of problems. But as we draw this to a close, it's a bit of a loaded question, but it's one I like to ask. people that are listening and thinking about starting a business, perhaps for the first time, maybe inspired by what you're doing, what advice can you give to anybody that's thinking about going on this completely bonkers, lonely, extraordinarily difficult, time-sucking adventure? You know, you're a bit older now. This is at least your third business that you've launched. And I'm sure, like me, you've made a ton of mistakes along the way. So,
Mm.
what few gems can you give to the listeners to say, "Hey, dodge this," or I encourage
Still
that?
making mistakes as well.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean,
um,
that's all part of it.
yeah, I think first of all, at the beginning, when you've got an idea, speaking to the people that have experience in the sector that you have your idea, and actually getting feedback, speaking to potential customers. I think the challenge with friends and family is they'll just say what you want to hear. Too nice.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think getting real honest feedback, and and you obviously take everything with a pinch of salt. But I always, the feedback from the people that have got the experience and are in the industry that I want to go into, they're the ones that I kind of really listen to, if that makes sense.
yeah.
I think you can de-risk a lot of a startup by just doing your research. Essentially, what would you be prepared to pay for that? What are the features you'd want? And I think that's a really, really key thing. And then raising money, and again, you touched on this in another episode. It's going to cost you twice as much than you think. So just having, raise more money than you think you're going to need, because it's going to cost you more, and it's going to take you
More time.
twice as long, maybe three times as long. So
Yeah,
it's when you've got those projections, have your worst case plan and then work off that. And
yeah.
it's great, it's great to outperform your projections and your figures. And so yeah, that those are probably the things that that I would say. I mean,
So in a
there's
way,
lots
as
of
well,
cool
you're
stuff.
you're
But
you're 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 talking about being very open and sharing your idea from the outset. I think there was this, certainly when I kind of started getting involved in any of this kind of world, certainly from family and things. People are like, oh, it all has to be what you're doing very secretive, and you can't tell anybody about your idea,
mm,
and this, that, and the other. And I feel like that's this idea that, oh, I've got a great idea, and if I tell anybody, someone's going to jump in and compete with me immediately.
yeah,
It's probably a bit silly. I don't know.
no, it's all about the tough thing is the execution and actually
Yeah.
doing it. And so I think, yeah, don't be put off if sharing, people stealing it, and because the chance are there's 100 other people out there looking at, thinking of similar things, but no one's actually doing it, which is the key thing. And I think the final thing is, yeah, like just something you're passionate about, because when you have the tough days and the tough meetings, if it's not something you really care about, then I think that makes it much harder. And to have motivation and to put blood, sweat, and tears into it, because it's when you launch a business, it's always there. You can never really 100% fully switch off.
No.
So you got to love what you do, I think, to justify that.
Yeah, the the bug, as we touched on earlier in the call. Ollie, mate, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Guys,
Pleasure.
go and check out earthly.org. Have a little look around. Whoever's listening, you might find some great stuff on there. And tune in for the next one. I've got another very exciting guest coming on in the next 2 weeks. Ollie, until next time, if you
Until
could
next time.
just stay with me for a little bit, because I understand that once I hit stop, uh, we we need to upload for a little bit. So I'm just going to press that.